Oh boy.
Did I kill your meeting when I joined this
New
meeting?
level of Zoom fun. Okay.
Is that what happened? So when I tried to join this meeting, it said there was another meeting in progress, and then did I put the kibosh on said
I'm
meeting
thinking you might have used the wrong link and it started another meeting with the primary account.
Ooh.
And then maybe the primary account can only host one meeting at a time reasonably. So, did you go into the email that you sent on February 9th to access?
Oh, I went to the email that you sent. Let's see. Oh, I look like I'm using the budget review session. I went back to the one that we used, yeah, February 9th. I tried to get in through the budget review session and that one didn't work. So then
Okay, that's probably the one that like closed out our meeting, but
oh, okay.
We were actually talking about that as far as like having to go back and find old links and old documents that people sent a while back, because we like this kind of like rotating schedule of information coming gradually. But it also means that you have to then like reach back into your archives and like sift through all this stuff to find things quickly.
Yeah.
So I think it's prompting me to think that like last minute, like when I sent that reminder, the text reminder, maybe instead of just a reminder, I just send the link real quick, you know, like just like resend that link over and over just briefly. It doesn't have to be a whole invite every time. It doesn't have to be a big package or anything, but and then reattaching reports and attachments and things later on, closer to meetings and stuff too. So yeah, we talked about that stuff. A couple of things. Steve, unless you have some burning topics that you want to bring in from any new developments, there were a couple of things that we wanted to circle back to just check in with you on.
Absolutely. This has been kind of I'm going through a little bit of a bonkers period, and the meeting, like getting the kickoff to community cares was not a smooth start on my end and on the participants' end. And in the middle of the community cares meeting, my VNA board nemesis, one of the founding fathers of this place, who absolutely hates me, detests me, said, "Oh, it's open. He's open." And he walked into the office because apparently the door didn't lock. And he berated me for about 10 minutes about the state of the neighborhood as I was having this Zoom meeting and talking. And it was about perfect. This is about, he has a strong dislike of me, and there's really not a whole lot I can do about it. So I don't really take it personal, and just in light of the way the day has gone, it was a perfect, it was the cherry.
I feel you. I have that happen like at least once a week where I forgot to lock my door and somebody like, I swear to God, the other day, one of my residents, I'm in a phone appointment and she walks in to complain to me about parking. And I'm like literally have speakerphone in an appointment, and I'm like, God, I got to remember to lock this door.
I didn't, it locks automatically, but not today. Not today.
Of course. Always at that moment.
Yeah, right.
Well, feel encouraged to just hand them like the health screening questionnaire and ask them to wait outside for you to review it.
Right? Yeah.
Oh God.
One time I used AA Electric, and apparently there was some historic beef between the VNA and AA Electric, and this person took me to task, and I said, I don't have a 3-ring binder with all the egregious offenders, and it just has not been a good relationship. And honestly, it helps when we start to talk about this place as an institution. I like to think about him and what we're going to change about him in this place. So that's verbalized.
Well, where we were at maybe is a good time to pull you into the conversation, because Eddie had just kind of asked a question about a house that just burned down over on Rose Court, I think you said, right? I feel like I drove past the smoke when that was going. I smelled, I was like, I know something really close by.
That was like a really big fire. Yep,
yeah.
Harold Besser's house.
Yes. So the Bester's house, I don't know. I know that people got out. Eddie, you may know more. I mean, the people that I've talked
No.
to on Rose said that there wasn't anyone that was hurt. I've not heard, I've surprisingly have not heard from the Besters. I do know that there are people in the community who have started to raise funds. So I think eventually at some point we'll try to connect those dots, and I'll reach out to the Besters. They were longtime community cares and neighborhood watch attenders, and I didn't see them tonight. The folks on the court that I was talking to said that they got out okay. We were not as lucky with the house on McCordy and Westnedge, and someone died in a fire there.
When did that happen?
The community cares meeting that I just left right now, I guess they're having a meeting with community planning and development and public safety and getting department heads together. There's some frustration that housing inspectors weren't allowed to get into that house on McCordy, and that was not a certified rental, and that someone died in there. So hopefully out of that tragedy, there'll be more coordination and more communication between some of the agencies. But to go back to the Besters, Eddie, if you know and or hear anything about that and want to bring me into the loop, that would be great. I do have one person in particular who has said that they would like to donate funds if and when something materializes.
Okay, yeah. And Cheryl's in hospice now with her brain cancer. So that's a lot going on for that family. They got 2 teenage girls too. So yes, maybe. I just know the 2, but yeah, that's just a lot for them to have to go through right now.
Yeah.
That's good to hear that there's neighbors that are pulling together. I heard from somebody that works with one of the girls in a program, so that's cool. I didn't know if historically VNA's ever done any kind of help or coordination of that kind of stuff, or if that's not really our realm.
It's almost always been on sort of a case-by-case basis. If something happens and you don't have a fund necessarily, but we were always willing to, shortly after I started here, there was a young person from the neighborhood that got shot on Burdick, and we did a small event to try to raise some funds for this person. And I was just kind of starting out, so I didn't really have a good grasp, but I think we're always willing, that would be, Eddie, yeah, if we want to get together sometime or email and spitball something, we could definitely try to do something with the court and with the Besters, because they're longtime residents. They've been stewards of the neighborhood, and they have had an extremely difficult course from the get-go. So.
Yeah, they've been pretty active.
Yeah.
Yeah, if there's any way to if anything is coordinated for that, and we can kind of put that word out to board members next week, I'd be happy to include it in my email to everybody. And there's been a lot of that lately. Feels like there's been so many home fires in the last 6 months.
Yeah, more than usual.
God, I'm wondering if is it furnaces malfunctioning are the causes, or did we ever find out after the fact what causes all these fires?
We often have, but we've not, often community cares would be the place where that information would kind of come out and people would tell us. We had an uptick in fires in the neighborhood when people were allowed to grow marijuana at home. A lot of smaller places got turned into grow rooms, and our old houses were not quite ready for that. I don't know that there's a common theme here, but again, in the winter, I can think off the top, I can think of houses that we've lost because of candles, because of electric furnaces, and a whole litany of things. And yeah, there's a whole, just about every year for the past 3 or 4 years, we've had someone who has unfortunately died in a fire here in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And those losses are a totally different story, but just losing the loss for the families when there's human life involved, but then loss for families when they're losing their home.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole nother level of just kind of like the loss to the neighborhood, when that, it's like a permanent, permanent voids that are created when that happens in our neighborhood. So, and oftentimes it's going to mean like years sometimes before the city acts on, on
Clearing the lot.
restoring things or demolishing. And it's just like such a different story that we see when there's a home fire compared to like when a house has a fire in Texas Corners. It's just like,
yeah, they're just starting to do work on the houses on Cedar that burned like some years ago, right across from the credit union.
Yeah. Well, Steve, there were two things that I noted here that we wanted to kind of check in with you about and ask for your perspective and your updates, if any. Which is, as far as we had talked about like the election and the meeting and everything, and Maggie had kind of brought up like whether there is anything needed at this point for the Vine line and just the mailing. And I know that one piece of it is like the balloting, like the balloting side of things and how exactly. I think that's kind of a unique thing. Like we've never tried to include like an insert, like a returnable insert this way. So like, is the printer are they gonna want like some specs or some details, and what exactly, like, can we get an idea from them, give them an idea maybe of what we're doing differently this time, and see if they're gonna want like extra specifications from us, or whether they have multiple options we're going to have to choose from, because it's going to be a little bit different from our usual.
Yeah. We've not done an insert as far as I know. Not something that we actually, I mean, no, not that I recall, not something that was deliberately meant to be taken out and returned to us, other than the hot spot. And that's never been an issue. I think as long as we communicate early on what we're looking for, Tammy has been real easy to work with there. So yeah, I don't think that's an issue.
And I think what just like maybe a thing to get clarification on, as far as like this being differently formatted from previous issues or an insert, is like, are we talking about like a removable, just loose, I was picturing like a loose, like leaflet, like half size sheet that is kind of inside the fold, where like you open up the newsletter and the returnable kind of half sheet or quarter sheet or whatever size it is like tucked inside and then taped together inside the mailing and is just like easily removable? Or are we talking about like printing something onto the page and having like people have to tear it off or cut it, or maybe that's something to get specific about?
Yeah, I don't have a vision for that particular part of the newsletter, I guess.
I think whatever is most cost effective.
Yeah, maybe we can get an idea from them.
I think I have a pretty good idea of what our requirements are, but other than that piece, I'm totally flexible. Like, I think we should just be flexible and see what makes sense, because the printer's going to have a better handle on that than we are.
Yeah. And so like the returnable portion of things, does a half sheet sound like it would be the right size, or would a quarter sheet be the right size for that? Or what do you think would be best?
A half sheet, I think, would work.
I think we want a half sheet so that we can separate the ballot from their identification of
right,
so that we have like that, because we kind of talked about trying to do a higher fidelity thing, so we're a little bit more loosey-goosey on terms of like who's actually voting. So if they have to fill out part of it that says who they are and that has a number on it, and then you tear it apart and separate them, and the other piece has the same number and then what they're voting for, so that we have an accountability of, if there's a question after the fact, we can go back and check our records and say, look, here's the verification that this person lives in the neighborhood, and here's their ballot. And they're separate from each other, so when we're counting them, it's still anonymized, but if we have to go back and check because someone challenges something, or there's some piece of
And-
propriety that we have a record, which we've
and
never
then-
done before, but I think is a good idea.
No, that's great. That's really well
But it
organized.
would be like, it would be like double the size of a post of a,
Right, exactly. You got
basically
a half
stamping
sheet and you tear it right down the middle. Half of it's the ballot, half of it's the info. And then
Yeah.
presumably we're gonna be numbering those as we receive them, because I don't think the printer would very easily be able to do like a different print on each page,
yeah,
without a lot of extra costs.
right. That's, yeah, I mean,
But we could number them as we receive them, I think.
yeah. I mean, that would mostly be probably on staff, so
Yeah.
Steve, I think, I mean, historically, we've had
Yeah.
like 20, 25 ballots, I think.
I think we've had about
30.
60.
Oh, historically, yeah,
Yeah,
we've been getting up
in-person?
there. I would say probably anywhere to like 60 to 80 in the past like 10 years is about the average.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, that's not totally odious.
No, it'll be curious to see how many people mail it back in. I would not expect a lot. I mean, maybe people walk it up here. I think that's probably just as likely.
Yeah, I mean, drop off is totally
Yeah, yeah.
valid.
What
It's-
we'll have to have dialed in then is before the meeting. Because if we're gonna have an actual in-person meeting and we need to tabulate at the meeting to announce the final results, is that what we're thinking?
I was
For
not
those last people
assuming
that
we were
show up?
gonna announce the winner on that at that time, I guess, but I'm not totally clear, because I thought we were allowing for the option for in-person voting on the day of the meeting as well.
Yeah,
And which would mean, like, that'd be pretty tricky to have, well, I mean, I guess we'd have to have a deadline ahead of time. And then in-person voting actually happens after the deadline for like return voting, which is a little wonky. I don't know. I was kind of picturing that
Yeah.
people would be able to bring their ballots that they got in their newsletter to the meeting and drop them off there as one of the options, which I feel like some people would probably do.
I think also we want to have ballots at the VNA
Yeah,
that people can pick up and fill up, just because we know there's that
yeah,
piece of more than one person in the same house. And that when people come to the meeting, if we're gonna have voting at the meeting, we should have ballots at the meeting. Not be like you forgot your ballot,
yeah.
bad sucker.
So that to me implies not having a determined winner at the meeting, but I mean, I've seen that happen in other forums before. It's not always, yeah.
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 Especially like when you do like email voting and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Any other, I guess any other stuff in terms of the Vine line that, I don't know, is needing any support or oversight, or are we looking like pretty good on that stuff?
I think we're looking pretty good. I guess I have been looking for a ballot or something like that. Is someone creating that, or is that what I'm going to do? Do I need, and I can work with whomever? I guess I thought, and just to make sure that I'm on the right page, I'm kind of getting the format of this newsletter ready. And then I thought I would receive this document, the ballot or whatever it is, and we can draft that. And then I'll be including that and sending it all off to the printer. Do I need to be creating the ballot, which is
So,
fine?
That's what Maggie was kind of asking about as far as
Yeah.
like templates and formatting. And I was trying to explain that historically, we've basically just like emailed text to, is it Tammy? Am I imagining? What is her
No,
name?
it's Tammy Hazel. Yeah,
Tammy,
you're right.
okay, I thought,
Yeah, you're
it just like
absolutely
came
right.
into my brain. Okay, good. But we always
Yeah.
just kind of email some text, and then she just does magic to plug it into templates, and we don't have those templates.
No, we don't, right. And basically I send her, a photo of the Vine office and say, please make this the front page. And then I send these things and she sends back the mock-up, and she's real easy to work with. But I do not have the template that I could just do that on my own.
Right.
So I think that the creation of the ballot, like I have no problem trying to make it, creating a ballot. Like I can do that, but I don't know what is going to work for the printer.
Mhm.
So I feel like there needs to be a discussion as we're making the
Yeah.
information that goes in the Vine line. You know, I have already started a draft with, and I have a couple more people to add and some more pictures to get, like, to solicit from people. But like I have bios and a picture, and that's going to go in the Vine line, right? For each person who's running, because that's how they're going to know who's running. So that's, I'm assuming, probably going to be a big portion of it.
Yeah.
Of what we need to put into the Vine line.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know if like something that's already separate makes sense, or if a tear off thing makes sense. It just depends what they tell us is more cost effective and sensible. If they have a template in a program and I send them like a Word document or a Google document and they run into formatting headaches, it might just be easier. Like they might say, oh yeah, let us do that for you, because that's going to be a headache. That's what I don't want to do. I don't want to do a bunch of work for them to have to recreate something. So I think we need to talk to them about it before we make this plan.
Can I suggest that rather than even discussing it any further, that Steve, would you mind just kind of like what we did that time that I collaborated, or those couple times I collaborated on those issues, just loop Maggie and Eddie into an email thread with Tammy so that y'all can pin down those details like sooner than later, so that we're all on the same page about what's going to be expected and needed for formatting that kind of like unique issue.
And Maggie, I'll send you previous ballots and you can kind of take a look at the previous ballot. I think was like a half page as well, just to kind of get an idea of what it's looked like and what some of the things have been. Because I think the actual ballots that we've used in the past, I think might work fine for this. I don't know that that would be an issue, but yeah, I will send connect Eddie and Maggie to Tammy at RJ's.
And if I could actually ask one more follow-up question about the election, that because I realize I'm not totally clear on this myself, but like for the candidates, because I did already submit the application form, but I guess I'm not totally clear on like, are you wanting for each candidate to send, in addition to that, like a bio kind of summary of ourselves, like facts about ourselves, who we are, introduction? Because there wasn't really a place in the application to do that, but we could all, I think, send that by email. Have other people, that maybe I missed a bulletin about that, or I'm just spacing something out, but I want to make sure that we're all getting you what you need for the issue.
Yeah, so what I've done for people who had signed up prior is I send a confirmation email telling them this is what I have from you. And I pull from what they filled out and I write a short bio for them, like, this is so-and-so, they lived in the Vine for this long, this is what they do. And then I put down the things they said about why they want to be on the VNA and what they would change about the neighborhood.
Okay.
And I send it back to them in the email. And I say, please, confirm for me you're still interested, because some of our applications were from like last summer.
Okay.
And here's your write-up, make any edits you would like, and please send me a headshot, even just something as simple as a selfie that would be suitable for like a it's photographs. So you can put it in the right.
That's clear.
So I just was sort of waiting for the last crop to come in through so I could just do that all at once.
Yep, I got you. That makes sense. Okay, I get what you're talking about now.
Yeah. No, those are good questions. It's fully valid. It's just that I haven't.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
I have like 4. I have yours and Brendan's, and then 2 other new people that I haven't vetted yet. So
awesome.
And I have a couple people. I have at least one other person that hasn't sent me a picture, but
that's great.
I'll send off what they've
sent. We might even get a few more over the weekend. Who knows?
Although I think we said our cutoff was the 12th, so
yeah.
So I could have the weekend
or wait
together.
Not the weekend. Yeah, you're right. That's Friday. Right?
Yeah,
that's Friday.
Coming up on us fast.
Yeah. Wow. So the other last thing, Steve, if you want to give your perspective and your recap, I did mention to the EC tonight that we have some exciting funding coming down the pipeline in relation to this supporting efforts for hope. And I guess I didn't really want to speak for that because I certainly don't have anywhere near the details that you've gotten into on this stuff, but I guess I just wanted to let you kind of give a quick update about that.
Yeah, sure. Well, in the confines, the cozy confines of the executive committee, I think that's fine. So I was contacted a couple of weeks ago by a representative from Stryker Johnson. I think actually Beth Johnson was her name. She was wanting to, she had a lot of questions about Hope and a lot of questions about Gwendolyn and our relationship at the VNA and how long we had known each other. And we spoke on that. And shortly after that, she contacted us and said that Gwendolyn had submitted an application and had been awarded $60,000 for her Hope efforts. And it's real exciting that I think Stryker is moving into a different realm with grants. And I think Gwendolyn got one of the first grants that has been more accessible, and just, you know, she's really just been dynamite. So it's really, it's great for her. I know she's spending a lot of funds just getting people into housing right now. And so hopefully this is able to help provide some stopgap housing there too. For the neighborhood association, we will realize a few $1,000s through our role in the fiduciary, which will be money that we did not have as a line item in the budget, but we can use for, for things that we'd like to, I guess, things that we did not budget for. So I think Gwendolyn has a great reputation within the community right now, and she's just been, she didn't take time off. She's been working straight through and working hard. And I think that, being the fiduciary has helped raise the profile of the neighborhood association as well. So it's been a boon for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like there was I don't remember when that last like big chunk of grant came through for her last year.
Yeah.
But just to have like this subsequent pot of funding made available to just like help her organization thrive and succeed. I just feel like, I can't help but think that it is important for the board to just like know about these successes and
Yes.
to know that like our fiduciary relationship in this case is kind of like flourishing in exactly the way that we always like hope that that it
Yeah.
will, and that I think it to me it just says like we really need to understand the impact that we can have by fostering startup organizations like this, and be thinking about like what opportunities do we have to do more of that, because this is like, I mean, this is exactly what you hope for when,
Right.
when Gwendolyn first came and met with the board before we ever had a partnership, like this feels like it's just charted the ideal path, and we couldn't ask for more. So
No, it's been great. I think it's a testament to her hard work and her efforts. And I think it also just helps get her closer to being her own nonprofit, which is, I'm sure, ultimately the goal.
yeah, for sure. And just like, it just really, it pays to put your faith in grassroots efforts to organize people, helping resources in the neighborhood. Like that's like we're putting our efforts in the right place in that way, and it feels really successful. It feels just like a big win. So
Yeah, absolutely. It is exciting. It's exciting to see her recognized. It's exciting to see people start to wake up and see not only her potential, but what she's actually doing on the streets. And that, that sometimes the same places get funded over and over and over. And I think she's really, because of her efforts, she's moved herself into a position that she's getting funds that haven't necessarily been accessible to other people before, which is great. So
yeah, definitely. And I think also what I've noticed too is just that name recognition is building, and it's starting to become such that like Hope through navigation is becoming like a top distinguished resource for like when people are trying to develop affordable housing, and when people are trying to develop successful transitioning and recovery programs, and get people into work and homes. Like her organization is starting to become one of like the top local organizations that the city and foundations and everything want to partner with. And I think, I don't know, I just feel like we should be really proud of supporting this all along the way. It feels like something that like we like this board, you know, we've done a lot of this as an accomplishment during our short time here. You know, this is something that feels like a direct fruit of, you know, recent labor, not just like something that, you know, forefathers or something did.
Right. Well, I think to the board's credit and to the organization's credit, I think we have really tried, when these sort of opportunities materialize, we really try to find out ways to make them happen rather than, you know, have just procedure or protocol says that we don't do that. I mean, you know, there were a lot of places Gwendolyn could have gone, but it was here where it took and where the partnership happened. Yeah. And so I think, you know, I want to tip my cap to the board and to the organization for being willing to do these things, because I think it's flippantly, it could just be like, oh, it's easy to be the fiduciary, but it's not always easy. And it really is like we are the bottom line. The buck does stop here. So yeah, I think the board deserves credit for developing that relationship. You know, we've been since 2019, and I think it's a good relationship.
Well, I mean, more than anything, I think Gwendolyn deserves credit, and then like you, Steve, deserve credit for I think really just you did a good sell with this one. You did the good people work of making these connections, and you brought this relationship, you know, as much as she did in its birth stages into being, and it feels like such a healthy development for organization. I feel like it's kind of a model, and I guess that's why I'm dwelling on it so much right now. It feels very much like a model that we want to not forget about, that we want to use as an opportunity to like recreate this relationship in the future. And like we should do more of this as a neighborhood association, you know. So yeah,
good job, boss. Yep.
All right, any sort of last thoughts, remarks, things we've completely forgotten or overlooked? Check-in. Do we want to have somebody? Eddie, would you like to wrangle out a check-in for next week, since I don't think you've had the
I can come up with something.
Awesome. Did you lead a check-in for us yet? I can't remember. I'm sorry.
I don't think so. No.
Brain's becoming scrambled by the day.
Yep.
As I trudge into my 40s. I would love that if you would lead us in a check-in next week. And inshallah, we will have a very organized, concise, and timely meeting next Tuesday. And thank you, everybody, for a little bit of overtime tonight. And yeah, I guess that's a wrap for now.
I just love that you guys didn't even flinch when the goat jumped on the table. Did you guys see that? You know how how cats will
I totally saw that.
When cats will Zoom bomb like meetings. I don't know if you've ever been goat bombed. I put the bottle on the table and she jumped up on the table and knocked it off. But you guys didn't flinch, not a single.
I just need you to know that like if this goat ever needs like a babysitter or like
she might by the end of the month, she might. But it's
living
careful what you ask for. She's a little out of work.
Just like short-term stints, I am available. I have been involved in wacky animal fostering situations lately, and I want more of it in my life.
She's like a hyperactive toddler.
Yeah.
See,
they all kind of are at that like days and weeks after birth stage.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know how bad my kids want to go to your house.
Yeah.
They've been asking me for weeks now.
Yeah. We had goats at Circle Pines, and they were just perfect for the kids. Like the little goats were just perfect with the little kids.
So
like,
cute.
perfect energy. Yeah.
They're like the otters of the farm world.
Nice.
Yeah,
All right,
Steve.
I'm going to say my goodbyes, and then
Yeah. Everybody have a great rest of your night. And I will see y'all next Tuesday. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Bye, Maggie.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I'm looking at the message that you sent. Yeah, Sarah and I were talking. Are you sticking around? It's just you and I. Look at it, just you and I.
Woohoo! Time to break out the beer, Steve. How long we've got for a beer after a meeting? Way too long. How was community cares?
It was interesting.
People up in arms about Nights In, or interested and excited?
No,
or?
This particular kind of segment of community cares is being pretty heavily dominated by Dutton and like Dutton Court in that area, which is good.
Wait, people from that or the renter, the landlord?
Well, so, God, this place is such a story, the whole neighborhood. There's a doctor and a lawyer who own houses on there. Kids went to K College, and so they live there. And they have such a sense of entitlement, and they just park their cars on the court, and then the kids, like, people can't get up and down the court. No, it's interesting. I think there's some strong advocacy coming out of that area, and I think that's an area in a part of the neighborhood that I think people over there kind of consider themselves downtowners. They like their proximity to downtown. They work downtown. I know quite a few of them that are down there. So I haven't seen anything. Sometimes, between you and I here, sometimes the neighborhood watch or community cares is, makes you blanch and makes you uncomfortable. But there hasn't been anything here that would trigger, that would make me think they're not focusing on anyone or anything right now. Basically it's been a lot of like, what the hell's going on with parking? How come we can't figure out parking? People are getting tickets, but we're having cars, like we had a car on Minor that was on blocks, that was on the sidewalk for 3 days. Like you can't do that. Like it just set off this whole wave of folks wondering, like, is anybody paying attention? And I like our new officer. But Maggie, you and I, like, we could go down every block in this neighborhood every day. Like, that's not a hard thing to do. So you can't have a car that sits over the sidewalk on blocks for 3 days. I think, people are out and about more, and I think they're seeing more things. The guy that came in and chewed my ass out is just funny. He's just a trip. He's a little guy, which I think contributes to it, but his wife was always really complimentary to me when we started, and she would say, you got the kids on board, because I had kids, and he said that was so key and so crucial to the development of the association, was to have it be this family component instead of just landlords and property managers. And I think that just rubbed him wrong, and I don't know what it was, but then
it rubbed him wrong that his wife thought you were doing a good job?
I don't know. There's some pride involved in this position. You wouldn't think it when you look at me. I mean, you know me, so I mean, let's be real. I got no fucking pride. But I don't know. I think maybe when he was here, it was all about like trying to get crack houses out of the neighborhood, and then here I come, and it's about, let's make a skateboard park. So he's just critical in the neighborhood. This time of the year when all the glacier snow recedes, it does not look good. It does not look good. It's grimy, and the city has been lax of kind of enforcing Herbie Kirby's back, and it's hard. It has felt like, I mean, but where do you want to focus? So when I talked to the neighborhood liaison officer, I said, I don't care what side of the street people park on, but I can't have cars over sidewalks and cars on lawns. But I have other people that you and I know that say absolutely they have to enforce what side that they park on. This meeting.
I think that I was not super satisfied with how the parking policy review went, because as someone who lives here, the alternating nights, but only between this bizarro weird hour where it's actually the next day, like that's really hard to figure out.
No sense.
It's not obvious. You're like, oh, no parking on Tuesday, Thursday. Okay, but no, it actually means no parking on Friday, Saturday, right? Like it's not the day it says, because no one's parking there at 4 a.m. Like no one is starting their parking stint at 4 a.m. So I've always found that to be really confusing and not functional.
No, and I think
it would have made more sense to me if it had said During the daytime hours, you can't park on one side or the other because that's when they're going to come and clean the streets. That's when the snowplow is going to come by. And functionally, that makes sense for the operation of a city. And as a person parking,
Yes.
if you know I have to have my car out of this spot by 6 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
I got it. I can understand that.
Right. If they do it in Chicago, if they do it in other cities,
Doesn't have to
I
be
think that's why the frustration level is so high, is that these kind of, like, I don't know if it's a solution, but maybe some of the partial solutions to these things aren't impossible, but we just don't seem to be, we don't
It's
seem
hard
to
to
have
get
the
the
right
city to
people.
listen. I feel like the city staff is full of a lot of people who've really risen to the level of their own incompetence, and it's really frustrating to
Oh, it's been a lot of like military promotion, like, oh, you're incompetent. Well, we'll just move you to this office then.
Oh, it drives me crazy. I just have
And I
a
know
hard
that
time with
they,
it.
you know, that like lateral promotion type thing. And I know too
And
that
it's a
you get
culture of
people
not being accountable.
that you have great, that have great intentions, like Rebecca Kick and Christina Anderson, and then they get in there and they're up against this unwieldy, 800 person unit that doesn't want to do it. I'm between you and I, I'm extremely frustrated with the people who are sort of supposed to be in the neighborhood, making sure that like, they're not housing inspectors, but they're supposed to be kind of making sure that the Herbie Kirby's get put away and that there aren't like garbage on lawn. It has become harder to get things done, and it shouldn't be trending in that direction. Like 15 years ago, if there was a bunch of garbage on a lawn, I could call it in and the city would go and get it. And now it's like, well, we'll send a letter to the owner, and in 2 weeks, if it's still there, they'll get a ticket. And I feel like we're just trending in the wrong direction, and I don't understand it. And I've struggled. We had a meeting a couple weeks ago where we were invited to talk about the directors were invited to talk about how public safety interacted this summer with the community. And I thought, like, because of my privilege, I really wanted to go and just listen to the other neighborhood associations. Maggie, nobody showed up. Only Ken from Oakwood showed up, and Maddie showed up from Northside. And Maddie talked about how dumb it was that the city was paying these out-of-state people, and that she's done this so many times, and that there was no reason to do this. And the only reason she was there is because Tammy invited her, and she really doesn't have any faith in the process, doesn't know why we're doing it. So that's one end of the spectrum. And at the other end of the spectrum, I've got Ken from Oakwood telling me that that was Antifa that was downtown. That was Antifa that was downtown.
I couldn't do your job, Steve. I would have lost my shit at that point. Like, I would have lost.
You know what,
it.
man? I did. I did. And I wasn't proud of it. And I just decided, like, you know what? Between these two is the truth. And I'm going to go right for it. And I'm going to say, and I spoke to Maddie and I said, we have an obligation to speak every time we're invited to do this, and that we have to hope that it catches more and more. And that after the summer we had last year, it's a radically different conversation about what we want from public safety than it was the year before, even if we had concerns. Like, now is the time to be putting forward what you want from this relationship, and to have one of the quote unquote leaders or gatekeepers for the neighborhood just dismiss it out of hand. It was really frustrating. And then Ken's an 80-something-year-old ex-police officer. Like, he is who we think he is, but nobody else showed up. Like, none of the other neighborhood associations stepped up. And
I mean, I feel like Stewart has largely divested itself from any interactions with the city.
Well, what was curious about that is they didn't want, in order to receive city funding, they were going to have to be much more open with their doors. And that's when
I mean, the Stewart Neighborhood Association is really about the houses. It's not about the neighborhood.
And they used to say that. They would say they made no bones about it. We're about the homes. And that's what it was. It's not a neighborhood association. It's the Stewart Area Restoration Association or whatever it is. And I think
Douglas has always had a treading a weird line, right? Like,
Douglas was two couples, a husband and wife and a husband and wife, and all the weirdness that would come along with that. And they had a good director who had grown up in Kalamazoo, and so she was really well connected. And she knew who to call. She knew all these people. And then one day she came in, Maggie, and she shut the door and she said, "I haven't done shit in 6 months." And I was like, "What?" And she's like, "I haven't gone to the office. I haven't done anything." And I could not believe it, because I really had a lot of respect for her. And then that led to this sort of, when she left, these two couples filled the power vacuum, and other people in the neighborhood weren't interested. And the two couples, one of the people, the man, was really difficult and loved guns and was just, you know, you'd go to his LinkedIn page and it would be him in all these gun poses, and he made people very uncomfortable. The person that worked in my office when I was first hired was a friend of mine. And when Stuart was looking for somebody, I really said, you need to have Zach. Like, Zach walks the neighborhood. Zach gets it. And he called me shortly after and he said, they have no interest in doing what we were doing. They have zero interest in opening the doors. They don't want to hear from anybody. They want about 6 or 8 people to call all the shots, you know? And I think you see, what is the name of the woman that just moved into the neighborhood? Her daughters are good friends with the Dunphys. I think she was.
Oh, crap.
You got it. I know it.
Yeah, I know who it is. It's Valerie Gray.
Valerie.
Yeah.
So Valerie,
Valerie was trying to rescue, trying like the Dickens to drag them over
yeah,
to
she was fighting
another
the good
side,
fight.
and
So
they almost like they basically went bankrupt instead of doing what she
all
wanted.
of a sudden she showed up and everything changed, and the city was so excited. They kept telling me, work with Val, work with Val. And I liked Val from when I saw her at El Sol.
Yeah.
And I just, you know, she wanted to really turn it upside down, and she got nothing but resistance from them.
We should recruit her. We should recruit her to apply to be on the board.
Yeah, we should.
Fabulous.
So this will tell you though, this is interesting. So when she first came to the first meeting she came to with all the neighborhood associations, I guess I would say, you know, you and I would say she had a blouse on, and maybe it was a low cut blouse. The Oakwood director was fixated on her breast and kept talking about how inappropriate her outfit was. And when we met as directors, she tried so hard to bring me into the conversation, and I had nothing to do. Steve, tell them about her outfit. Her breasts were just there. Everybody's looking at her breasts. And I said, you
were looking at her breasts.
I wanted nothing to do with it. It was disgusting. And it was just like, instead of inviting her into the fold, they just circled the wagons, you know? And it was like, man, that's some bullshit. All of the directors should go. All of them need to go. Like, you know, Tammy's leaving this year, and, you know, hopefully they'll get someone from the neighborhood that wants to open the doors, you know? And I get so frustrated. I like my fellow directors. I do. They're good people. But, you know, they've been doing it for so long, and they're extremely comfortable, and they don't want to do more than they already do. We take on so much shit here that I have no idea what we're doing just because we want to do these things, you know? I think the way they do it, I could call Tammy and she would say like, oh, this is what we're doing. I have a great idea. You know, we're here, 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 and here. And here I'm like, Eddie, what is Building Blocks doing over there? You know, and I think because we open the door and we want people to come in and do stuff. And, you know, I knew people that tried to get to the table at Edison, and they'd say like, yeah, they're not interested. So
it's a tough one. I'm surprised Eastside's not.
Eastside is great in that. So the biggest problem with Eastside is that it's so physically removed. It's under the viaduct. Eastside has a lot of really nice, really neat parts to work with, like Peace House. You know, there's some really neat building blocks there. I have a ton of respect for Pat Taylor on the East Side. She just rolls up her sleeves and goes to work, you know, and I just think really highly of her. And East Side is going to be
really no nonsense
proximity. It's just not a core contiguous. It's not one that people think of when they see, like Oakwood. Oakwood is back behind D&W, you know, and nobody thinks of Oakwood. And the director,
technically Oakwood shouldn't be getting anyone from the city.
To me, and what I did not know is when I was like, Oakwood is a CDBG neighborhood.
Oakwood is not a CDGB neighborhood. The city has just not updated their stuff. Right. They should not be getting CDGB funds to run a community association. They don't qualify by what?
One of the things that I did not realize was that, what happened, Maggie, is that we'd start to get people coming here. When we started to get a reputation for being able to get things done, I started to get people from that neighborhood coming here. And what I realized is like, yeah, there's a lot of big houses on Parkview and on Woods Lake. There's also an awful lot of less than 1,000 square foot houses that people are are struggling to heat and they're struggling to you know, maintain.
The
So
thing is that the CDGB eligibility is determined by census tract.
right.
And that's in a census tract that contains like West Edge Hill and all the
Yeah.
neighborhoods. So it is not, and technically Southside is not CDGB eligible either. But West Main Hill is, because it's in a census tract that qualifies. So it's not at the same resolution as what the city understands its needs to be, you know? So it's something you have to navigate carefully. And that doesn't mean that CDGB funds can't go to people who are income qualified in those neighborhoods, because the whole city qualifies as individuals. But in terms of targeted neighborhood funds, like what we get for the neighborhood association,
Yeah.
Oakwood doesn't qualify, and it hasn't qualified for at least 2 years.
Well, they
So the
get,
city could get snapped by that. And the city has, I think, gotten themselves into a bit of trouble with some of their spending already, because if you're going to spend money on enforcement, you're supposed to technically, I think, bring an equivalent amount of money to redress the problems that
oh, no kidding.
enforcement, and they don't do that. Like
No,
the
that's
lion's share of
awesome.
CDGB actually goes into a pot that only does enforcement, whether it's public safety or code enforcement.
I hate that. I hate to lean on enforcement. I've hated, you know, I even struggle with this being a historic district. As I've said, I would love to have a historic district that was not punitive in nature. If you
Yeah.
wanted my soffits to look like they did in 1880, help me do that. This is a neighborhood that is really, like, this is a neighborhood that has this designation on it that is completely inappropriate for most of the people that live here. When when the median income is $24,500, like, we simply can't cater to a cottage industry like a historic district to try to keep things looking the way they want them to look, like they are in Grand Rapids. And I'd love to find a way to, you want my soffits to look like that? Help me,
Right.
help me get there.
That's exactly the same way I feel about code enforcement too,
Yeah.
I also
Well,
think,
and you know what I feel like, and I've been disappointed that there isn't someone, like, if you and I were department heads, we would call people in and would say, like, look, here's the fucking deal. Go after Pat O'Brien, go after AIM, go after these massive property managers. Don't go after David Wilson and his one house.
there's a huge, I feel like there's a
Leasing
huge
neighborhoods, right?
space to step into that, but how do you, there's not
You can't say that, right?
power to
You
do it.
can't say that, and we don't have anyone smart enough to say, look, I can't say do this, but figure out how to do this so that when you're enforcing on snow removal, Pat O'Brien gets $170 tickets, not Jamie Kavanaugh gets one $70 ticket for Borough Court, which is the only enforcement that I've heard of this year.
And
Borough
technically,
Court.
they only enforce snow removal if someone complains.
Right, and there's a guy in Borough
the
Court that
complaints-
doesn't like Jamie, so it becomes personal and vendetta, and
Crappy. Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. The way their code is written, it's not the way they enforce it, and therefore it's only used with either in personal vendettas of neighbor against neighbor, or and this is true for all code. It's their right-of-way code, and their housing code and their nuisance code. Those are all just tools for retribution, either by the city when it has its own goals that run up against low-income families that maybe they want that area for something else, or for individuals who use it against each other. It's stupid. You should write a law and enforce it the way it's written. It's a shitty piece of legislation if it's not being enforced the way it's written. That's what I think.
People that have used this office like the bully pulpit, and we've had property managers use this office to go after their competition, and it was basically like, oh, no, I'm in charge of the housing committee at Vine, so I'm going to call community planning and development and make them give tickets. I think what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing and what I personally am clamoring for is Kalamazoo needs to be governed by people who live in Kalamazoo and who walk these streets. And I think what you see is, like, those kind of enforcement, that kind of stuff happens when people go home to Gull Lake at the end of the night and they don't have to walk the same streets. And there is no rhyme or reason as to why this happens. And no one is accountable to say, like, why in this neighborhood, we've had one ticket this year for snow removal, and it was one person on a court on an empty yard. Like, there just doesn't, I don't have the faith that the folks at the city know what they're doing, quite honestly, or how to even
do it. My experience that they do, and
or really even how to do it. And my hope is that, like, you know, Jared came in today and he and I got into a big argument, which was always fun. But one of the things oh, it was fine. He wanted to argue, you know, he's younger, so he wants to argue about what's what's wrong with Joe Biden, what Joe Biden's done wrong. And I just said, like, people don't care. And I said,
yeah, young people don't seem to care too much for Joe Biden.
No, I mean, I don't care.
But you know, the way I look at him, he's your rebound after a bad relationship. Absolutely. He's not the guy you marry, right? He's just getting us to the next thing.
He's completely a stopgap. But you know, like, but it was interesting because Jared is younger and his people are younger, and they're, you know, they're very critical. But what I guess he and I started talking about this whole Lee Chatfield thing, and I said those guys took us as rubes. They took us as suckers and thought, we're going to put this guy here and do whatever we want.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, Maggie, like, there have been so many shots across the bow.
And I mean,
whether
it's not that different from Mary Malcolm losing an election and getting a job doing the same thing.
You know, and so what I'm feeling is, like, people are starting to talk about, like, no, this place needs to be run by us. We don't need to have, it's not like El Salvador where we have 12 families and Mary doesn't get elected, but we're going to put her in a position. The people in Kalamazoo decided that they don't want to work with Mary, you know, and that they don't like working with Mary. So, you know, my hope is that we somehow get to the point that city workers, you know, live in the neighborhoods and they live in the communities that they serve, and that they
understand the consequences
of
both writing tickets and not writing tickets.
Right, absolutely. There's a lot of power in both, you know, in both of those things. So,
and I think there's one of the things that was great about Ryan is I feel like he was the guy who would walk up and have the conversation with you about why the bad thing's going to happen if you don't change what you're doing. As opposed to just coming and dropping the hammer on you.
And that's what you need. That's why everything is about relationships. And so, you know, there's 200 some police officers and there's like 8 community officers. They should all be community officers.
Yeah. And they should all get out of their car and walk around.
People have said that's when it all started. When the physical barrier of the squad car came in is when relations deteriorated. And so when I have a car parked on the sidewalk, my hope is, like, I'm going to call Officer Walsh, and Officer Walsh is going to go over and say, hey Maggie, your car's on the sidewalk. Instead of me giving you a ticket, I'd say it much smoother, it'd be great if you could move it. You know, hey, I didn't know if you know this or not, but we got to get to, you know, whatever the way to do it would be.
Right.
Like that. And then you've made a contact, and then people know, nobody has to write a ticket, you know. I also feel like, and this is the thing that people don't want to talk, well, don't acknowledge a whole lot too, it makes for better police officers. You know, I can't imagine wanting to go to work every day and have people think you're a fucking asshole. Oops, sorry. Hey there, didn't see you. I'm looking out the window. You know, like, I think that you see officers in this neighborhood that at the end of their time here, they say, you know, what was neat is I got to meet people. And I, like Ryan, you know, and Ryan, I think the way things were going, I think Ryan would have moved into this neighborhood, you know, and then I think he felt like with some of the state that he didn't want to be that pioneer. But those people are coming. They're in the pipeline. And the conversation needs to be, when you get hired by public safety, which one of our awesome neighborhoods are you going to move into? And it can't be it can't die on the tracks there. Like, it has to keep going, you know?
Yeah.
I think that's the frustrating thing, is it seems like some of these solutions are not impossible. We spend $25 million a year here between the Community Foundation and the Gilmore Foundation. Maggie, if you and I could spend $25 million a year here, you know, El Sol would have 4 parapros in each classroom that actually knew what was going on, you know, and like, spend that money, spend it wisely, but there's no rhyme or reason to it sometimes.
No, and there's very little awareness of sort of the history of how things
got there's no institutional knowledge. There's very little institutional knowledge, and people, because people come and go, and there's very little accountability. So, you know, you might leave disgraced 10 years ago and then come back in the come back in the cover of darkness, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I should get going. I was wondering, are you out and about? Are you in the morning? Are you out and about and walking around and stuff?
Sometimes, not always, but sometimes.
Well, there were 2 things. One was that this newsletter, I have not felt like I was on the same page, and like, you and I should just sit down and be like, what are we doing? You know, so that we figure it out, because we can do it.
The wine line, you mean?
The conversation that I had been wanting to have about the last board meeting, and not a sensitivity, but just a conversation, and in something that I was hoping just to talk to you about. And I thought, well, if you're out and about and we're interested, I'd be glad to buy you a coffee or something.
So
I'm
the
not
kids have
necessarily-
school. I could do Friday this week because the kids don't have school.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's fine. We're meeting, Gwendolyn and Sarah and I are meeting up here too to kind of just go over the fiduciary elements of that.
Is that
of the-
Friday afternoon or Friday morning?
Friday morning.
Yeah, that's, I don't,
Okay, well, that's okay.
tricky because
So-
the kids are home all the time, right? So.
Yeah, I know. That was like when I
and they
thought
have
about it, I was like,
classes
oh, when you drop the
all
kids
hours
off,
of the
but that-
day, so.
No. Well, the other thing I thought of is
9:30 till 4, pretty much somebody's almost always in class, except for there's like spotty hours in the middle of the day where they
Yeah.
don't. But even when they don't, like I still have to be with them.
right. Well, it's not. Yeah. Okay. Then let's. I
So
don't
I
know.
mean, we could
We'll
like
try to figure it out. It's fine. I can also come down to
have
your
me on my
place
board
or
or something.
yeah, meet at El Sol or something.
Yeah, that would work actually really well because the kids will usually play on El Sol.
Well, how
They go
about
on Thursday afternoons and play with other kids at El Sol sometimes.
if that materializes, if you do that this week, will you just send me a text or a Facebook message, and if you want to?
Yeah,
If you'd
No,
like
I'd like
to.
chat with you.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like that too. Okay, I'm gonna check out of here and
Bye, Maya. Barb, I hate when people touch my face. Please don't do that.
oh yeah.
If
Yeah,
not,
but
it's
you
not
just-
even cute.
Don't.
Maya.
Barbara,
Bye,
stop.
Maggie.
Bye,
I'm not
Steve.
touching your
Barb.
face.
Barbara
Maya.
Madeline Wilson.